All right. Welcome back, word students. So this is part two of our lecture on lesson 10. We left off the last lecture talking about the word orthos, but in that last lecture, we also started with the word archaios, which meant old. So we're going to start this lecture two with another word that essentially means old, and that is this word, palaios. You can see the English here. Palaios is an adjective that really means old. Our book translates it as of long ago. To get the stem, you drop off the OS and you get our stem pela, though there may be some other letters in there you want to look at. And this is another instance of where the Greek word means something kind of generic, and then English usage has become a little more specific. So as I mentioned with archaeology, which is the study of old things, we use that for ancient ruins, right? Paleontology is essentially the same word, right? Study of old things. But we use paleontology now to primarily talk about the study of fossils, which is why I included. I mean, and the thing is fossils are usually much older than ruins, kind of depending, they're still just as old as ruins, but it's just a different field of study. And so that's just kind of the way it's come in. So you'd use a dictionary to help you with that, because paleontology, the study of old things, is the same kind of as the study of archaeology. So there's paleontology. Paleography is really interesting, especially if you're planning on going into kind of an ancient classics, or even it doesn't even have to be ancient. But so paleography is the study of old people's handwriting, and this is actually a really big thing if you're planning on studying someone like Shakespeare, who wrote a bunch of stuff. And so there's people who devoted their lives to studying the handwriting of Shakespeare, or text purported to be in Shakespeare's hand. That would be called paleography, old writing. So that is where that word is used. Or no, this is one where I'm like, man, if I had studied more, if I knew more biology, I would be much more well versed on this particular word. So in Greek, there's this word futon, futon, and because I'm not a plant person, I always just think futon, Futon, which is like a cheap bed that many of us slept on when we were in our 20s. Could be you. I had a futon for way longer than my back should have had. But anyhow, that's not related. That futon is totally different. This futon from the Greek means plant, and so it gives us this stem, PHYT, which I know pops up all the time in like biology books and all. No, no, because I was like, not photosynthesis, that's not it. But if we look at words like phytogenesis, so this is the study of the birth of plants, like how the plants come about. And then phytoplankton, these are plankton or algae or something that contribute to the biosphere of the ocean. So plant plankton. The one word I do know is neophyte, which just means a new person. So, like if you start at a new job or if you start in a new field, you'll be a neophyte, a new plant, until you grow and become bitter and old. And then a zoophyte it's like an invertebrate animal. So it's like not a plant, but it looks like a plant. So I'm sure PHYT pops up all the time in science stuff. And so when you see it, you'll know what it means. Here is another movie, The 300, and this is a bit of a reach, I will admit, because I actually put the slide together. The word here is thermos, which means hot. It's an adjective, a Greek adjective that means hot. It is the word thermos. It's the exact same thing. Thermos keeps something hot. Here's our stem, therm. And I was looking at this, I was putting the slide together, and I was like, is this weird? Am I sexual harassing people? Because that's not what I meant at all. I didn't mean to be like, look at these hot apps. The reason I included this picture is because one of my favorite uses of the word thermo in the world is this word thermo pops up in the place name Thermopylae. Thermopylae is where the Battle of the 300 took place. Thermopylae is a very hard, intimidating name, especially if you're just learning Greek history. But what Thermopylae means is hot gates. Thermopylae just means hot gates, which is like it just feels so much less like potent and powerful. But Thermopylae means hot gates. That's all I can tell you. So if you knew about Thermopylae, you're welcome to know the etymology of the word. But we, of course, are going to see thermos in a lot of different places in English, including hypothermia, which is something I feel like I suffer from all the time when when your body can't get hot enough, right? It's especially in the winter. I'm just constantly hypothermic. And then there's hypothermia, but I don't know enough about that, but it's definitely a word. overheated, I guess, heat stroke. Thermal is a wonderful shirt that keeps you warm, but I mean, thermal is an adjective, can refer to anything. Thermos is a thing people drink out of. And now diathermy, here's a medical term. Diathermy is when it's a treatment that has heat waves going into your body to warm up your internal organs as some sort of therapy. So there is thermos. Now here's tapas. Now it's a tricky word. On the one hand, it's very simple, right? Tapas means place. That's what the Greek word means, is place. But the word place, like if place has a million different meanings from very specific, like the store Hot Topic is a place, to kind of much more metaphorical. And in particular, place in Greek and in later writings is associated with this phrase commonplace. Commonplace is like the sort of the usual thing, right? Like a usual thing that everybody uses. And those two words come to be used kind of interchangeably, like a physical place and a commonplace. And so that's why from the stem top, we have things like topic. So a topic is a commonplace. It's something that everybody, it's a thing that people are talking about. So that's why topic is related to topos. And of course, in English, in the humanities fields, we talk about topoi in literature all the time, which is basically kind of like another word for theme or commonplace idea. So that's where it's a little bit tricky to make that connection. But then there are some very specific ways. So topography is the kind of mapping out of a place. It's a depiction, a writing down of all the elements of a topos, of a place. And a toponym is that word onoma that we learned last time of a topos. So it's a place name. Toponym is a place name. So that's tapas. It's going to pop up in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And I wasn't sure. I guess Hot Topic is still a store, which is shocking to me. That's been around forever. I mean, I used to shop there when I was a young person, but, and Claire's, like, it's just, anyhow, it's crazy to me, some of these stores that lasted. All right. So that's it. We are done with the stem/root section of this lecture. So now let's talk a little bit about some prefixes. Now, this is the section of the book. If you look where the book introduces these particular prefixes. Oh, I should have it, but I don't. But basically, this is the part where we're going to start to learn some Greek prefixes that have wildly different meanings. They can just mean that they're either, sometimes they're very specific, sometimes they're very metaphorical. And so you just kind of have to be flexible. Even if we were learning these in Greek, these prefixes in Greek, I would tell my students, like, you just have to kind of it might be different every single time. So there's some value to memorizing them. Sorry, to knowing what they mean, but you have to be flexible with them. So ana, our first prefix, is a perfect example. That can mean up. There's a Greek word called anabasis, which means the way up. So it can mean that, but it can also mean back, like going backwards. Can I think of an example right now? Not in English, but we'll see it. So up and back are two completely different concepts, but ana can mean both. So we'll keep an eye out for it when we see it. I'll make sure to point it out. Dia, sorry, the Greek here looks like garbage. It's my mistake, but you can see the English prefix is fine. Dia means through, but it also means across. So the only one I could ever think of with this, which we've already talked about, is diarrhea, which is when something flows through you, right? But diagram doesn't mean through, but kind of like a writing across. Diametric, measured across. So we'll see it. It'll be great. Hupo, we just saw with hypothermia, right? So that means under heat. Hypodermic needle is something that goes under your dermis, under your skin. So that one's a little more straightforward. You just have to be careful not to mix it up with hyper. Our next prefix is meta. Now, so we talked about this when we talked about hybrid words. Meta can mean after, it can mean change. So when in the word but it can also mean about. So in the phrase metadata, that's data about data, right? Data about data. In the phrase metamorphosis, that's change of form. Where would we see after? Meaning after. That's something to keep an eye out for. But meta can mean after. but I can't think of anything right now. But when it comes up, we'll be flexible. We'll be ready for it. I keep thinking metonym, which is like a change of name. Yeah, but meta's all over the place, but that's when you just have to kind of be flexible with it. Para is one of my favorites, just because it's crazy. And there's a really good example of para, which is paranormal. So para can mean alongside, like next to. So think of parallel lines. Those are lines running alongside each other, right? But paranormal means contrary to normal. So just two very common uses. You can see how the word para means completely different things. So every time you see it, you kind of have to look it up or think about it. But then peri, P-E-R-I, this one's pretty chill. It just means around. So we just saw this, right? Like parodontia is about around the teeth, right? When I see peri, I think of peristyle columns, which are columns that go around a building. So peri, P-E-R-I, is pretty straightforward. Para has a lot of different meanings. There's an Aristotle. What am I thinking of? Parafusis. I feel like this might be, if my brain could get to it. Paranormal, parafusis, meta. Oh, let's go. Yeah, meta. This is it. Meta. Metaphysics. So the word metaphysics is meta plus physis, this word nature that I can't believe we haven't officially learned yet. So when you think metaphysics, do you think, this is what I would have thought at your age, that metaphysics means like against physics, like something that's metaphysical doesn't really follow the rules of normal physics, right? That's why it's metaphysics. But the reason we call stuff metaphysics is because of Aristotle. And Aristotle wrote a book called Physics, about physics. And then he wrote a book after that, which he called Metaphysics. So metaphysics literally means after physics, meaning after the book of physics from Aristotle. And then it's just come to take on a bunch of different other meanings. So literally there meta meant after, but nobody thinks about that now, right? It's just a fun fact. So, all right, so those are our prefixes for this section. And wow, that was probably a pretty short lecture. Good for us. So come back to lecture 3, where we will do our suffixes and finally get to some Greek mythology. It's going to be really great when we get there. We're going to love it.